From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way. From off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to be live, and I'd actually planned to go live at 4, but with rolling blackouts in California, didn't seem like it was the best idea, so I went ahead and jumped on a little early. Hopefully we make it through the entire episode. But yeah, I'm really excited to be able to talk about 49ers, and of course, it's live Q&A, so drop any questions you have. It's been a little while since we've been live together. I'm excited to have this conversation, and what is up to everyone in chat? Hey, Gary, how's it going? What's up, Donald? How's it going, everybody? How's it going, Quandell? How's it going, Mosquito Killer? Good to see you. He said, what's up, Ant? How's it going? What's up, Spy Nick Danger? The chat is already getting going, and I'm excited about this episode because there's a lot of information, of course, to get into because the 49ers continue to have practices preparing for the game against the Chicago Bears. There are things coming out about some of the roster. Of course, yesterday there was the news that George Kittle had suffered a groin injury on Monday, and he may be at risk for playing on Sunday. And Kyle Shanahan didn't want to get too much into it, that he was hoping he was going to be able to go Wednesday. Of course, he did not. Shows up today for practice, did not practice again. And so now things are kind of up in the air. Got, Aaron Wilson saying that the injury is worse than people think, that George Kittle's probably not going to play in this football game. So I think the 49ers know that they may be playing without a all-pro potential player in George Kittle. And I think that's just something they're going to have to get used to a little bit. And what's up to everyone else that's jumping in? Mr. Corey, how's it going? What's up, Traffic? Yeah, football is back. It's going to be a fun night tonight. I hope you guys are all going to watch the game. It has implications for the 49ers because the Los Angeles Rams are playing the Buffalo Bills. Could be an exciting football game. Should be fun. Hoping for a very good game between both of those teams. And of course, hopefully the Rams lose, right? 49ers fans, come on. We want this week to end with the 49ers being the only 1-0 team in the West. Might as well get it off to a good start, but I hope everyone's having a good one. So George Kittle may miss this week. Of course, we have walkthroughs tomorrow. If he goes ahead and he goes through walkthroughs, there's the potential for him to be able to play on Sunday. I think the fact that they were hopeful that he was going to practice Wednesday makes me think there's still a outside chance George Kittle could be there. Now, yesterday, they went ahead and insulated the tight end position, bringing in Troy Fumagalli to the practice squad to make sure that they have depth in case. But they already had 4 tight ends on the roster. They already had Tyler Kroft, Ross Dwelley, and Charlie Warner. They have plenty of tight ends and plenty capable tight ends to be able to fill in for Kittle. Will they be able to be the receiving threat George Kittle was? No. But maybe between all 3, you can supplement what he does well and potentially, get a tight end that's close to it, right? So maybe Charlie Warner can block to the level of George Kittle. Maybe Ross Dwelley can have some of the receiving aspects that George Kittle has. Not to that level, but a little bit. And then maybe Tyler Kroft can go in there and be a red zone threat. So you can look at all those guys in that avenue, and maybe all together they almost equal what production you would get from George Kittle and the things that he does really, really well. So I hope everyone's having a good one in chat. I'm going to get a look at some of these. Mr. Corey says, Tartt looking for that money before he returns. Yes, and that's another thing to talk about is Jaquiski Tartt went on 95.7 The Game, and he was talking on there, and he said he had been in contact with the 49ers organization about coming back to the Niners, but he was not willing to take a veteran minimum contract. He wants to get paid more than that. So it appears that there is interest from the 49ers about Tartt coming back and reuniting with the team, but he wants to get paid. And obviously right now the 49ers don't feel the juice is worth the squeeze. They're looking around and saying to themselves, wait, can we get enough production out of George Odom and these other guys like Tarvarius Moore and maybe even a Dante Johnson be able to supplement and insulate until Jimmy Ward gets back? I think that's what they're doing. They're looking around. They just don't want to spend money on Jaquiski Tartt. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite them in the butt. Because I thought they would pony up a little bit, but I feel like they believe they have some leverage there, right? He goes to Philadelphia, he gets more than the veteran minimum, but then he gets released. He's a free agent again. No one has signed him. So, I mean, I don't know exactly how he's trying to bargain this, 49ers are just sitting back and saying, hey, look, you can come in and play for the league minimum. And Tartt's, sitting back saying, no, you're going to have to pay me more. And all the while, his clock is ticking because the closer it gets to Jimmy Ward coming back, the less likely it is for Jaquiski Tartt to get paid, whether that's veteran minimum or not. So, yeah, I'm glad that got brought up by Mr. Corey. Well done. Killer says, at least we're not playing a tough team out of the gate. It's a game we can afford him to miss. I think that's a very good quote right there. It is a game that they can get by. And that's kind of what you're hoping. It was a little interesting listening to D'Amico Ryan's press conference. If the press conference hadn't happened just happened, I would have came with some of those clips. But D'Amico Ryan's talked about the fact that he doesn't really know what Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, is going to do. I mean, you have an idea because he's with LaFleur in Green Bay, and they run a similar style offense all through the preseason. I watched every single Chicago Bears preseason game and then broke down the third one where you got extended play from most of the starters. You can actually find that breakdown, that scouting report over on Patreon. But when it comes down to it, you just don't know exactly what you're getting from the offense. You have an idea, but that's something that happened last year as well. Dan Campbell, the new coach at Detroit, you don't know what you're going to get out of these coaching staffs. You have an idea because you've seen what they've done in the past, but they will also somewhat alter the way they go about developing a game plan depending on personnel. So a lot of times personnel goes into that, and that's one thing I'm going to get into on Saturday's video of what is the game plan, is sometimes you do what you do unless you have players that can't do that, right? If you don't have press man corners, you're not going out there and running press man. Those guys are zone corners. You got to figure out how to use those zone corners to the best of their abilities, because it's all about maximizing your players' abilities to help the football team. You're hoping that your players' strengths coincide with weaknesses on the other team so you can take advantage of it, but there's no guarantees. So, yeah, they're going to do things a little bit different, because guess what? Over in Green Bay, they had Aaron Rodgers, and as much as I like Justin Fields, he's not Aaron Rodgers. The one thing that Fields does have an advantage of Rodgers is the legs, moving, running. Those are aspects they're going to try to take advantage of against this 49ers defense for sure, especially the aggressive nature at which the 49ers play. Lou says Kittle is hurt more and more. Kyle needs to stop putting players at risk like other coaches. When it comes to soft tissue injuries like this, you see a run of it. I believe a lot of this has to be attributed to the collective bargaining agreement. These guys just aren't practicing as much as they used to. Training camps aren't as rigorous as they used to be. These bodies are these guys are bigger. They're more athletic. They push their bodies to the limit, but the training methods are definitely different. So you didn't run through all these things in the past. Now, soft tissue injuries are hard, is that they happen. You have to make sure you stay flexible. So I don't really blame Kyle Shanahan for this. As far as practice load, George Kittle's missed a ton of practices during the year for maintenance days. They've done a really good job of trying to manage him. Unfortunately, sometimes, especially with the groin, it just happens. You tweak a little bit, you press a little bit this way or that way, running a route. Next thing you know, you got a groin issue. So I don't blame Kyle Shanahan for this for sure. And when you look at it, George Kittle has played 84% of the games that he's been in the league. So 84%, I know a lot of people are saying George Kittle's very injury prone, and that's how it feels. But 84% is not bad for the position that he plays, a tight end that is a physical blocker, that has a physical brand of football. And I don't think you can just tell a guy like George Kittle to turn that off. But, I mean, do we want him to get hurt? No, we don't. But still, it's just one of those things. You're hoping that these guys stay healthy, but these things do happen. But what's up, Lou? I'm glad you made it in the chat. What's up, 49ers Faithful Forever? How are you doing? Saying Sutherland, a possible call-up scares me. It doesn't make me feel comfortable either, but when it comes down to it, it's probably the most likely thing for the 49ers to do, because right now you've got Hance. Blake Hance comes over from the Cleveland Browns. He's running a similar system over there, but the problem is he was playing offensive tackle. I mean, most of his snaps last year, in fact, all of his snaps were at left and right tackle. Now he's going to transition to center, and he's going to pick up Kyle Shanahan's offense and understand what his reads that he needs to make and the line calls that he needs to adjust to. It doesn't seem very likely that Blake Hance would be able to do that. So having an experienced guy like Sutherland that understands the offense makes the most sense. Now, that is something you don't want to happen. You don't want Sutherland taking those snaps. But you know what? When it's an emergency time, you got to do what you got to do. You got to break that glass and bring in Sutherland. So I think Sutherland will be a call-up. He's going to be one of those guys that look for Dante Johnson to be the other. That way he can fill the 4 safety role. and also fill the 6th cornerback role. That versatility plays big in this game against Chicago. So, yeah, it's unfortunate Sutherland's going to be there, but it's necessity because Dan Brunskill, again, did not practice today. Now, Dan Brunskill is one of those guys that they know they can count on. Kyle talked about it yesterday. He didn't need reps. Spencer Burford could get all those reps at guard. They already knew what Dan could do, but if he doesn't go through walkthroughs tomorrow, it's unlikely that he will play in this game against Chicago, which means Colton McKivitz will be your 6th offensive lineman, and Keaton Sutherland will be active, and one of the 8 or 9 offensive linemen that the 49ers are going to have dressed and ready to play. It'll probably be 9. Who will be the 2 guys out? I'm expecting Nick Sakel to be out, and I would not be surprised if Jalen Moore or Blake Hance are the other player out and not dressed for this football game. I just think it's unfortunate. And Donald Johnson says these injuries of people like Kittle every year get old. Maybe we need to keep players under glass when it isn't game day, break the glass game day. I mean, that's how it feels, right? It gets a little frustrating. It gets a little frustrating when these guys get injured. But remembering that these guys are, pushing themselves to the limit every single day, injuries are bound to happen. I feel like injuries happen all around the league. Luckily, right now, nothing is catastrophic. Nothing is an injury that the 49ers can't overcome right now. We don't have players out for the season. We did lose Mo Hurst. But beyond that, the 49ers have stayed pretty healthy. And it's been the last few years that the 49ers have definitely learned how to manage the load of these guys at practice. And I think it has paid dividends because we're going to this game pretty much healthy other than George Kittle. It's disappointing because I think Kittle was going to be big in the run game as well, being able to be the focal point on those outside zone plays, being able to help the 49ers get it done. But it's just not there. It's really not there. And Mr. Corey says, remember, I told you Charlie Warner was going to have 20 catches, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns this year. It starts Sunday. I hope it does. I really do hope it does. Juanito says, injuries, unknown quarterback, and bad O-line. This game isn't going to be easy one, and wouldn't be surprised if the Bears steal one from us. The only problem with that, Juanito, is you have young quarterback for the Bears. You have a worse offensive line. That is no lie there. The Bears have a worse offensive line for the mere fact that they're younger at certain positions like left tackle. Braxton Jones playing left tackle is very scary. Now, they do have Cody Whitehair. He's a very good offensive lineman, but question marks all throughout their offensive line. I think that is another thing that you got to remember. And then also, you just got, the lack of playmakers. They do have a couple guys, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, but you're missing out on guys like Allen Robinson. So the 49ers don't have to adjust to take away a player, a skilled player. They just got to stop the run, make sure David Montgomery doesn't get going, make sure Khalil Herbert doesn't get going, and then after that, go ahead and clamp down these receivers on the outside. And they still got Pringle that's dealing with a hamstring. They might not even have Velus Jones. He hasn't been practicing dealing with a hamstring. His hamstrings all around the league, and it's affecting the Bears as well. So I think that you're right that the 49ers have some concerns at certain positions, and offensive line is definitely one of them, and I think safety as well. But the Bears do as well. I don't think any of these teams are coming into this feeling very confident 100% that they got it. Ernest says, "Let's go, Ant." Thank you, my man. I've been watching every show, but haven't been able to catch a live. Welcome, Ernest. I'm glad you came through. Always nice. And yeah, it's been tough for me to do lives recently. Been just loaded down with content, but I've been excited about it. I'm looking forward to having lives this weekend. Of course, we're gonna have the reaction show after the game. I'm really excited about that. Make sure you guys come through for that, and we'll talk all about this game. Gary says, I don't want to see Sutherland anywhere near the game. I put him on the first bus. Gary has his just let him go over on his channel. It's one of the most entertaining things that I see. So yeah, Ernest says, Ant, are you excited? Is it me or the season about to start? Yes, I'm very excited. I'm very hyped. This is the best time of the year. And of course, we got football tonight, but we also got the 49ers on Sunday, which I can't wait for. I think as we get closer, I just get more and more excited and more hyped to talk about it. I'm curious to see how Kyle Shanahan goes out there and executes his game plan with Trey Lance at the helm. I want to see what they're going to do with these big running backs. And of course, we'll get some answers about this interior offensive line. Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford, it's for real now. Let's see how they go out there and do it. And then we just got one heck of a defensive line that's going to be fun to watch. But I want people to get eyes on Travarius Ward. They haven't seen him yet playing for the Niners. So that'll be fun. Also, the improvements that Elijah Mitchell's made. He looks so much better in training camp. I mean, and that's scary to say because he was really good last year, but he's even better now. Yeah, and then Ernest says, I don't agree with that. The Niners have a weak link on defense, but I would say the questionable position and on defense has to be safety. What about you? I think safety is a concern because we don't know who's going to start next to Talanoa Hufanga, number one. Number two, you don't know at what level they're going to play. Tarvarius Moore didn't have the best preseason. We've seen him definitely play better in the past, including 2019 and early 2020. Thought he was better then. Maybe the injury has slowed him down, but he's an intelligent player. What I'm hoping is once they start scheming it up, disguising coverages, they can cause certain situations to happen, and maybe he'll settle in. I am worried about Cole Kmet. If you watch the game preview show, that's something I'm concerned about. Cole Kmet going against his 49ers safeties is not good. Jimmy Ward would be able to go in there and mitigate a lot of Cole Kmet's abilities to make plays, but you don't have that now. And you hope Tarvarius Moore could be that guy, but so far you haven't seen it in the preseason. Maybe he'll show up. He'll be ready to roll. That's why I've been all for bringing in Jaquiski Tartt. If Tartt was playing in this game, I would have zero concerns about the safety position. I have that much faith in him, especially in run fits where Justin Fields going to want to get going. And you got to stop David Montgomery. Carson says, who's starting at right offensive tackle? Who's starting safety? So right offensive tackle is going to be Mike McGlinchey. Chris Forster was on earlier, given his press conference, and he said Mike is looking back to 100%. For the last 8 practices, he's seen him steadily get better, and he looks back to the old Mike. I think that's a good sign for the 49ers, which Mike McGlinchey is going to start at right tackle. And at safety right now, they have it up in the air. Of course, the unofficial depth chart has it listed that George Odom is going to start next to Talanoa Hufanga. My belief is that it'll be Tarvarius Moore. I think he's going to get the first shot at it. He's the more traditional free safety. Talanoa Hufanga and George Odom would be more like 2 strong safeties out there together, which if you're going to interchange them in the box is great, but it could leave you vulnerable to something if you run a deep third look and have one of them, in the middle of the field. It could have some struggles in coverage. So I think what the 49ers need to do is start Tarvarius Moore. Of course, you're going to have to make some adjustments, but knowing you can call up Dante Johnson, if something happens to Tarvarius Moore just not getting it done, put in Dante Johnson. He's going to be good in the coverage end of the game. Allow Talanoa Hufanga to go ahead and handle the box, helping those run fits. I think that's probably the best way. What we could see, though, is if the 49ers do go with Odom, they go with a 2 deep safety look with more of a man underneath. That does leave you vulnerable to Justin Fields running and scrambling, but you're going to have to take some risks to go ahead and mitigate missing a player of Jimmy Ward's caliber. You just can't do what you wanted to do before. It's unfortunate. Donald says, I think the players need to adjust their offseason workout, maybe even adjust their diets too. Yeah, definitely. And, it's interesting because George Kittle has been one of those guys that has adjusted consistently every offseason. Jimmy Ward did as well. Jimmy Ward got into yoga a couple years ago. Deebo Samuel got into it as well, working on getting more flexibility, being more limber, so that way they don't have injuries continue to persist. Jimmy's actually stayed pretty healthy, Mr. Jimmy Ward. It's unfortunate that it got him this year, but Kittle, most of his focus has been on his feet. He was having problems with feet. He was having problems with knees, so that was a focus, and now it's a groin. It gets him. So, yeah, I think these guys continually try to adjust, but so far they haven't found the right formula, at least some of them. Mr. Corey's ready to fire Shanahan if they don't win this game. Come on, that's crazy. Can't get there with you on that one. Donald says, oh wait, I'm sorry, Donald's talking to Gary, so I'm not going to read that one. But Traffic says, I just got a vibe about this season. In general, going to be so many good games this year and big expectations for 49ers. I love it. What's up, Kelts? How's it going? I hope you're having a good one. I did see you're launching a new show with some guys, so I hope you guys do well. Our guy Jay in the Bay is going to be on there, of course. I mean the Dream, and I know I'm missing someone, Barry a Baller, I think. So I hope you guys have a really good show. I hope that launches well. But Kelt says, how much does the possible warm, humid, heavy rain impact the play calling scheme, turnovers, etc.? I think you do have some sort of a concern about it. Ball security is always something you're thinking about. But you have Trey Lance, who was used to playing, up there in North Dakota. He has an understanding of the weather and inclement weather and how you handle it. But each player just has to understand what their job and roles are. Can it play into it? Yeah, especially early on in the season. If you're dealing with humidity, there is, the problem of making sure you stay hydrated. But the 49ers players have started their hydration well before they ever get off the bus or get on that plane and head to Chicago. So the training staff will make sure they stay healthy. The training staff and the equipment room will make sure that these guys have the proper cleats to be able to handle this field. There's question marks about this field as well. So there's a lot of things that go into this and a lot of people that play a part in making sure these players can be on the field and be ready to go. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot there. There's a chance of rain. I saw there's a chance of rain, close to 50% chance of rain with up to 17-mile-an-hour winds. That could, that could bother some things. But one thing I am happy about, though, is Trey Lance has a very strong arm. He's going to be able to absolutely whip the ball through the wind. It shouldn't be a problem for him. Shouldn't be a problem for Fields as well. Now, if the rain happens and this field gets muddy, it could get interesting. So, depending on how this game goes, you want to go ahead and get points early and then be able to, outlast the other team. I think that's a good sign for the 49ers because the 49ers have the better defense of the two, which means they could outlast the Chicago Bears. Juanito says, what is the main thing you'll be watching or with Trey? It's just consistency. I want him to locate the proper receiver and get the ball out on time. That's what it's about. Don't have those chances, times where you hold the football or you miss open receivers. And I'm not talking about open receivers that are on the backside of his progression that everyone sees and cherry picks and says, wait, he should have thrown it to this guy. No, just when his receiver is open, get it out in your progression. I think that's what's important. If this guy's your number one and he's in one-on-one coverage and you take the shot, go ahead and do it. But I think that's what I want to see is Trey's handle of the offense and just him staying in rhythm and getting the ball out on time. That's the most important thing for Trey Lance in this game because that's going to signal not only his growth from last year, but what we can expect from the year. Because, if you're going out there and you're making the right reads and maybe you're just not executing at the highest level, you can get better with execution. What struggles with is if you're not making the right reads. That's what you want. That really demonstrates your understanding of this offense, and then you're able to get in there and make some real big plays. So, good question, Juanito. Golden Dragon says, expect quarterback 1 and Trey Manning Lance to pull out his Peyton Manning impersonation against the Bears. Hopefully it's the one from SNL where he's like throwing it at people, hitting them in the back and all that. That was one of my favorite ones. Paul says, McGlinchey's health has made me smile, and I feel much more confident about our O-line. And what's up, Paul? I hope you're having a good one. Yeah, McGlinchey being back, having those bookend tackles, Trent Williams, Mike McGlinchey, definitely makes me feel better as well. Feel more confident. That's going to help Banks. That's going to help Burford. And then, Chris Verster had a lot of nice things to say about Jake Brendel, that he believed Jake Brendel performed the best out of those three interior guys. I think that's a good signal as well about the 49ers offensive line and how they're going to run this thing. So let's see what Brendel does. Let's see how this offensive line handles things. But I do like the fact that we're going to have those two bookend guys. Thomas says, hey, everybody, life begins again this weekend. I love that, Thomas. Yeah, exactly. Football is back. Football is ready to go. And Juanito's asking the chat, does anyone think Jimmy will make an appearance? Minus the 49ers getting up really big in this football game and then pulling Trey out just for health reasons, I don't think we're going to see Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jimmy will be on the sidelines. I know he's been handling a scout team, so I don't expect to see him. I think the media will show him. I think the telecasts are going to show Jimmy Garoppolo a lot. They're probably going to talk about him a lot because that's what they do. They want to show the backup quarterback. Last year they kept showing Trey. This year it'll be Jimmy. They really just switched roles. That's all it is. They've switched roles, and of course they've had a little bit different careers along the way. But Big Papa says, and that's Paul says, looking for Jimmy to be smiling with a clipboard in his hand. That's where I'm at with you. That's where I'm at there. And Ernest says, I don't believe you need a co-host anymore, dude. You're killing it. I really appreciate that, Ernest, so much. Having fun, and it's easy because I get to have you all as my co-host and interact with you, which makes it a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy it. And I have been working with some people here and there, and it's been a lot of fun. If you have John Chapman's Patreon, I've been doing a weekly show with him over there as well. You guys can check that out. That's been a lot of fun as well. He calls it his bonus show, and we've been having some fun conversations. We get a lot into offensive line. I wonder why that happens. Maybe because I was an offensive line guy for so long. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then right here, 49ers Focus says, what's the over-under on Jimmy being shown on camera during the game? Early in the week, I think I talked about this with Horse and Jason. I think I said over-under 3. Now looking back on it, I think it has to go up. I think it has to go over-under 6. I think that's the line. I think it is. I mean, I think they're just going to show him. Jimmy Garoppolo's going to make it to the screen. It's just what's going to happen. I don't know. Well, if people think there's an over-under on that. Yeah. Mr. Corey says, Ant, say someone offers a second for Garoppolo during the season, would you do it? I wouldn't. At this point, I'd rather have Garoppolo in case Lance gets hurt than a pick next season. Yeah, I think you have to weigh it at that point. I mean, you're going to look at the money. What point in the season is it? Because it's going to be a prorated salary for Jimmy Garoppolo. So if you go ahead and move him, and you don't have to eat any of the salary, you free up more cap space. But really, Jimmy Garoppolo is very affordable. So you can weigh whether you want a second round pick against what's remainder of his contract. I think it would have to be sweetened. I don't think a second round pick gets it done anymore. It's probably going to have to be more because of how good the contract is that the team is going to be taking on. And the fact the 49ers right now would, like you said, Mr. Corey, feel very comfortable with Jimmy Garoppolo in case something happened to Trey. You have the ultimate insurance policy because you have a guy that understands your offense better than anyone else and also understands what it means to play in the playoffs and play in a Super Bowl game. There's just experience there. You don't want to lose that experience. That experience is good for Trey as well. So, yeah, somebody's going to have to come through with a very, very big deal. All the while, Jimmy Garoppolo has to sign off on it as well. Will Jimmy Garoppolo sign off on it? I don't know. But that is a good point, Mr. Corey, and I think that's how a lot of people are going to start thinking and feeling. Traffic says, even if the 49ers got up big enough to take Lance out, you got to keep him in. He needs as many snaps as possible. I agree, Traffic. He needs as many reps as possible. But I'm telling you right now, there is absolutely no way Kyle Shanahan leaves this guy in. Say the 49ers are up, 28, 31 points in the fourth quarter. He leaves him in because what happens if Trey Lance gets absolutely hit and injured? They would second guess Kyle Shanahan the entire time. Kyle Shanahan would second guess himself because, yeah, those reps are extremely important, but you do not want to run the risk of him getting injured and missing opportunities to play the rest of the year. The worst situation for the 49ers is for him to suffer a catastrophic injury that makes him unavailable for the entire year. Then he's really starting behind the 8 ball next year. So, yeah, you're not going to get as many reps in this game if you get up big, and that's okay. You just make sure you move on to the next one, and he has opportunities to play against the Seattle Seahawks and get reps there. Reps are going to come. You just have to make sure you don't run a risk of him getting injured. You just can't have that happen. Trot out Jimmy Garoppolo, let him finish the football game. Also, that works out a couple of things. Number one, Jimmy knocks off some of the rust. He didn't play in the preseason. But also, if there are trade partners out there that are watching, they might see how Jimmy Garoppolo looks and might feel more comfortable with his shoulder and then be willing to kind of sweeten the offers they've made to the 49ers or present an offer if an injury happens. So I don't think that, they want Trey Lance to not be in the game, but in a certain situation where you're winning big, you have to go ahead and you have to make that move and ensure that Trey Lance suits up against Seattle and doesn't get injured. Shylock says, signing Jimmy G saved Kyle Shanahan's job for one more year. I think that it's always a good idea to have a really good backup quarterback. I really do. And maybe Jimmy Garoppolo ends up, helping this football team during the season. We don't know. I hope Trey stays healthy for the entire year. But I honestly believe that Kyle Shanahan won't even have a hot seat unless Trey Lance absolutely struggles the entire year. Then I believe you can start to put Kyle and John on the hot seat for the mere fact that, Trey would have to get it done next year. But that's only when the hot seat starts. He's nowhere near that right now. He's nowhere in danger of being fired because Jed York went through the mediocrity. After Jim Harbaugh, it was not a pretty sight. He wants to win. And Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have brought winning. They won in 19. They won in 21. If they can win again this year, I think that, Kyle Shanahan's going to be here for a long time. And, of course, he is married and tied to Trey Lance. That's why I don't get all the Mac Jones talk because he knows his career is connected to that quarterback that you draft. And so I think he understands that. But I do like bringing guys up. And then Ernest says, hey, I don't have Patreon. It's hard to set up. It is. We'll have to go through that sometime for sure. But yeah, it is. And that's the thing, right? Some content is over on Patreon. It's a little bit easier for some people to make money on that avenue. But one time I'll go through it with everyone and just kind of explain how you go into Patreon and how you sign up and all that. Because there are a lot of bonus shows, especially on our Patreon. We have 2 full shows, film breakdowns, the whole thing. Paul says, hey, Ant, do you have any idea or an opinion on how the running around a running back room will divide up carries this game? Yeah, I have an opinion on it. I think that Elijah Mitchell's, of course, your running back 1, and Jeff Wilson Jr. is running back 2. I think those 2 are going to get the most carries. I think those guys are going to handle the load. I think they're even going to split the third down back role. I think you're going to see those guys in and out on third down as well. They can both catch the ball. They're both good in pass protection, and they can still run and get the yardage that you need to get. I think when it comes down to short yardage is the bigger question. And I think it's going to be figured out by who dresses. You're probably not dressing 4 running backs in that room, 4 and then Kyle Juszczyk. So that means Jordan Mason or TDP are not dressing against the Chicago Bears. The one that is dressing will be your short yards back. I think they'll use Mitchell and Wilson sometimes in that role, but having one of those big physical running backs that can go in there and get you a yard is going to be what you want. They drafted TDP with that thought process in mind. Now, Jordan Mason outplayed him in preseason and training camp. So who's it going to be? I think that's a big question. So I think right now, all the carries, primarily the normal carries, are going to first and second down for sure are going to go to Elijah Mitchell and Jeff Wilson Jr. I expect Elijah Mitchell to have 15 to 20 carries, and I expect Jeff Wilson Jr. to have 6 to 8, and then short yardage carries to go to the other back. That's kind of how I see it going. Doesn't mean it will, but from everything I've seen, the way the 49ers handle things, that makes the most sense to me. Ernest says, do you think Tartt will sign knowing that he's only going to start for about 4 games, then be a backup for the rest? I think it's about your thought process. And I don't think that Jaquiski Tartt thinks he's going to step in and only start for 4 games, because he understands that Jimmy Ward misses football games. Talanoa Hufanga last year missed football games. There's going to be opportunities to get on the field. All you want to do as a player is get on a team. I want to get on a team, and even if it's 4 games, I'm going to go out there and prove in those 4 games that I'm a valuable player that you need on your roster, or I'm going to prove that I can still do this in this league. So one of those other 31 teams that are watching are going to want to sign me on their roster. So, yeah, I don't worry about getting in there in that situation. I think with quarterback, it's a little bit different, but every other position, I just want an opportunity. I don't care if it's 1 game, 2 games, 3 games. You want to make sure you can get out there and prove to everyone else that I can still do it. And you have to have that confidence in yourself that you can. If you lose that confidence, you're no longer an NFL player. You're not going to make it. You have to have it consistently. And I think Jaquiski Tartt believes that he's still one of the better safeties in this league, and he wants to go out there and prove it. And he feels with the right opportunity, he can go get some things done. So I do think he could step right in and play right away, and I think that would be good for him, because I think a lot of people around the league would take a look at it. Shylock says 31 of Kyle Shanahan's 39 wins from Jimmy G. Kyle isn't a good coach. I think it's with all things, you can be a good coach, but if you don't have a good quarterback, and what's up, David V? I see David V had his channel membership, so thank you so much, David V. I really appreciate that for upping your channel membership. Awesome, thank you so much. But Shylock, I think a quarterback is so important to a coach. Kyle Shanahan, when he was picking his spot that he was going to go, that was one of the reasons he originally wasn't going to go to San Francisco. If you hear the story about him deciding to go to the 49ers, he wanted to go somewhere with a quarterback that he could win with. Because these coaches, you're good. You can coach it up. You can scheme it up. But having a competent quarterback, having a great quarterback is the difference between being a playoff team consistently and winning a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan wanted to be able to win Super Bowls. And the way that you're able to do that is by having a quarterback. That's the thing. His dad, Mike, had Steve Young as an offensive coordinator, and then went and had John freaking Elway. And when you have a quarterback like that, it helps you win Super Bowls. And that's what he wanted. And that's what he's trying to get with Trey Lance. And, of course, Jimmy Garoppolo is very capable. Jimmy Garoppolo did a very good job. And you've seen, you marry Jimmy Garoppolo with a Kyle Shanahan-led offense, you can win a lot of football games. I think you could put other quarterbacks in that situation, and Kyle could win football games. So, I think it goes hand in hand. Good coach, good quarterback equal great success in the league. It's hard to be consistently good in the NFL. It just really is. It's hard to win every single year. And if you don't have one of those elements, if you have a great quarterback, but you don't have the coach to go with it, you're going to fail. You put Jimmy Garoppolo, in a different situation with a different coach, he's not going to be as successful. So they need each other. It goes hand in hand. And I think that's one thing to always remember when we're breaking down players and coaches. They need each other to be successful. Mr. Corey says, Brock Purdy should come in a blowout. Sending Garoppolo out in a blowout looks crazy. Here's why that doesn't happen, Mr. Corey. Because Brock will not be dressing for this football game. You're dressing 2 quarterbacks. He will be inactive. He's one of the inactives. I already know it. Him and Nick Zakelj are going to be inactives for this game. We just have to know who the other 3 are going to be. That's just how clear it is. Those guys are not dressing. I think Zakelj still got development. And I also think that Brock Purdy's not going to dress as long as both quarterbacks are healthy. So it won't be Purdy for that reason. Juanito says 2-4 season record for Shanahan. If for whatever reason we have another losing season, he will be 2-5. Other head coaches would be fired at that point. You see Shanny in the hot seat. If they do not win this year, I believe he could get into the hot seat, especially if Trey Lance struggles, because they have a football team that is built to win playoff games, a football team that's built to go to the Super Bowl. And him and John Lynch made a quarterback decision. So if that quarterback doesn't pan out, then yes, you start to get on the hot seat. But if they play well and things go well, there's no hot seat in sight. So yeah, I think Jed York also understands where this team was coming from. In 2017, this roster was terrible. I mean, this roster was really bad. And they've had to reshape this roster. Some of the moves they made didn't work out, which potentially could have stunted the growth. Guys, Richburg didn't work out. Jerick McKinnon didn't work out. Quan Alexander in the long run didn't work out. He wasn't here long enough. The only thing that really worked out for them is the fact they struck on some players in the draft that are big-time players for this football team, like Fred Warner, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. Those were really big football players that they struck on the draft and have impacted this team. But yeah, I mean, a hot seat happens if Trey Lance doesn't develop at all this season and the 49ers lose. I think that does happen. But we'll see. Hopefully the 49ers win. I think they're going to win a lot of football games this year. Paul says, I think it's Shanahan who has made Jimmy a highly respected quarterback, not the other way around, which is why the rest of the league is not interested in Jimmy without Kyle Shanahan. I think people see some of the limitations that Jimmy has, but you also can look at the strengths that Jimmy has. And Jimmy's strengths coincide with how Kyle Shanahan likes to run offense. So Jimmy Garoppolo would fit in a Kyle Shanahan style offense, right? He definitely would, because that void in the middle of the field is always going to be there when you're able to run the football consistently. So if you were able to plug and play him into a system in which they ran the football very consistently, got lots of yards, and then left a void over the middle of the field, Jimmy Garoppolo could be successful in that. But it has to be the right system with the right playmakers around him. And I think that that's what it comes down to. And Kyle understood what Jimmy was good at. And in 2021, Kyle did something that I didn't really expect, is he let Jimmy Garoppolo play in the shotgun more than I thought he would ever let a quarterback, for the mere fact that he felt Jimmy was more comfortable in that situation. So Kyle adjusted to try to win football games, and it ended up working out because Jimmy had himself a pretty good season. Harold, what's going on, Harold? Welcome to chat. Says, how serious is a Kittle injury? I don't know for sure, and that's one of the things, if you're a head coach, you don't want to give out exactly, how serious an injury is. You want to make it seem like it's day-to-day to the outside world, because you don't want them to know that George Kittle wouldn't play. They could change their game plan, adjust how they're going to attack you defensively. So you have to kind of leave it up in the air. But, that's something that Albert Wilson came out today, or Aaron Wilson came out today and said that it's pretty significant. They would be surprised to see George Kittle play. So, I mean, that's a little frustrating. And thank you so much for the subscription. I'm going to Garple Bath. I hope I said your name right. If I did not say your name right, go ahead and leave it phonically, and I'll make sure I get it right. But I appreciate you joining the 49ers Cutback crew. Always enjoy having subscriptions, so thank you so much. And if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. We've had a nice trend of subscriptions going recently. It's really fun. You want to be here when we're talking 49ers. But back to Harold. I don't know exactly how serious the injury is. All I know is when it's usually a groin, it's nothing you want to play with. Groin injuries are ones that linger. So if it's not very significant right now, it might be in the 49ers' best interest to rest George Kittle anyways. And just make sure you don't have to run a chance of putting him on IR down the road and him missing more football games. So I think the 49ers are going to be careful with George Kittle. If he went on the IR, that wouldn't surprise me overall. I just think you got to be careful with groin injuries. I mean, Deebo Samuel in 2020 dealt with the groin injury, when he came back, and then it was a few weeks later, he's back on the shelf again. So it's something you don't want to risk. You want to make sure you give him ample time to get healthy. So I'm kind of leaning towards George Kittle not playing, but I can't tell you for sure how serious it is, because Kyle Shanahan is not going to give away that knowledge, because that doesn't help. And Charlotte says, no doubt Kyle's a good offensive mind. It's his talent scouting that needs some work. It could be. I mean, he's missed on some players, right? Like Joe Williams. That didn't work out for sure. There's been other guys that they missed out on, that potentially, and he said when it comes to quarterbacks, we'll see. I mean, that's it. So I think that happens with all coaches. So I don't think you're wrong, Shylock. I think there's a couple of guys, of course, that he missed on, and we'll see. The jury's out on Trey Lance, and if he misses on Trey, that'll be the big one. You know what I mean? I do think he's going to be fine. Carson says, hot take, Juice actually gets a good throne on a wheel route in this game. I love that. A good throw to Juice on a wheel route. Hopefully it results in a touchdown. I just think Kyle Juszczyk is so due for that play. He's due for a big-time touchdown. Well played, Carson. I love that. Mullins can't get him. Jimmy can't get him. It's just been a real struggle for Juice to get one of those plays. Hopefully they line one of those up and get him a big-time touchdown. That'd be great. I want to see Kyle Juszczyk catching the ball this year. He's so fun. He's so fun. And 49 Fogey says, Kyle isn't a scout. They have a whole room of scouts. Yeah, he does have convictions about players. They do have guys. And what's up, David V? Thank you so much for being in chat. Really, really appreciate it. It's great. And Mr. Corey says, exactly. Yeah, look how Belichick is being exposed without Brady. It does happen. You know, I mean, it's a struggle. You're as a coach, you're as good as the players around you. That was one thing I understood as a coach, is I needed to have good football players around me, and I did. Those players, and then it was my job to put those players in the best situation to be successful. It's not enough for you to have talented players. You have to also understand what to do with those talented players. If you play them out of position, it doesn't help your football team. And those guys are counting on you to put them in the right situation. So it works hand in hand. Having a good coach, and good coaching is important. Having very talented players that are willing to do what you want as a coach is important as well. And that's what the 49ers got, a really good group, really good energy around their organization. Emmanuel Sanders came out and said that today, that he really enjoyed his time in San Francisco, talked about the energy, the people there, that he's going to be watching them this year to see how they do. So I think that there is something to that, and it's important. Portola says, I don't get Tartt's mindset. You only have a limited playing time. He needs to keep stacking money. 9% inflation out there. Yeah, I mean, I thought Jaquiski Tartt would jump on an opportunity to come back to San Francisco. I thought he'd be willing to take the league minimum. That has not materialized, which means he is worried about getting a little bit extra. He doesn't want to have that veteran minimum. The 49ers, of course, have that money. The fact they haven't been willing to do it, they're going to take a look. So everyone should focus on the safety position. The comments coming out from Jaquiski Tartt this week about the 49ers having contact, watch the safety position. If they struggle in the safety room, do not be surprised if Tartt doesn't sign the next day or that night, because they're going to want to make sure they're ready to go when you're going against DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I don't care if Geno Smith's the quarterback or not. Just want to make sure. But if that safety room plays well, then Jaquiski Tartt might lose some of his leverage, because then you don't need him. So he's playing a game right now. He's running the risk. He's trying to get a little bit extra money. But you're right, Portola. I'm surprised he didn't just go ahead and take some of that money. He probably should have, because that could put you in a bad one. And Mr. Corey says, I know Purdy will be inactive. My main point is how crazy Garoppolo will look in mop-up duty. Yeah, especially if he goes in there and lights it up, right? I mean, that could be fun. I mean, that's the thing, right? We get both guys locking it up. Jimmo says, Chip and Bulky left Kyle a terrible team. It was barren land. It was not good. Kyle was going out there and overpaying players and bringing him and John Lynch, trying to do anything they could with the hopes that they were going to be able to build a pretty good football team in a couple years, with Kirk Cousins being the quarterback. Of course, the whole trade for Jimmy Garoppolo happens, and then history changes. But yeah, I mean, it was a tough place. They were bringing in guys left and right to try to make it happen. And Carson says, put in Purdy if we're up, with the laughing faces. Harold says, will Shanahan be the next Andy Reid? I hope he's the next Andy Reid in the fact that he wins the Super Bowl. I hope it's not NFC Championship loss, NFC Championship loss, NFC Championship loss, like Andy Reid had to have happen early on in his career with a long time and a new team before he won a Super Bowl. Let's hope it's more Kansas City getting the right quarterback, winning a Super Bowl. If that's what you're talking about, Harold, that's what I'm all for. If it's the other, losing with a certain quarterback and then having to go and get another one at a different organization, I hope that doesn't happen. And what's up, San Francisco? Welcome to chat. I always like when John comes in. It's always nice to have you. Quando says, is Kittle a top 3 tight end? Yeah, I think he is. I think the top 3 tight ends are pretty clear. It's Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and this is no particular order, and it's Waller from the Raiders. I think those guys, Darren Waller, I think those guys are the top 3 tight ends in the league. And I think that, as all-around tight end, I think George Kittle's the best all-around tight end when you factor in blocking and receiving. I think he's just more well-rounded. If you're talking about a plain receiver, I think that's when there's more arguments. I think Travis Kelce is probably the best receiving tight end in the league. He just doesn't block very much or very well. So I think that's kind of how it goes with those guys. And let's see what else we got. Joe Williams had skills, just never got his mind right. And that's the problem. And that was the reason so many teams were hesitant on Joe Williams, is he had literally quit in college. He had stepped away, and then he ended up coming back and he looked dedicated and he played really good. I understand why Kyle wanted him for a system. He was a system fit. The problem was, you're right, the mindset never got there, Donald, and he never got back to what he was before he ever walked away. And that's unfortunate. Jimmo says, I was surprised Juice wasn't named a captain. Yeah, I mean, that's a little surprising, I think. But when you look at the guys who were chosen, they've got a lot of talented veteran guys in that room. So just because you're not named a captain doesn't mean you're not expected to act like a captain. I'm sure Kyle Juszczyk is the captain in the running back room. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those things that was a little surprising. And Harold says, best kept secret, Kyle Juszczyk. Let's go Niners. Yeah, I love Juszczyk, man. I love him. That's why I got one of his jerseys. He's just, to me, he's a fun player. I mean, I was always one of those guys that grew up, though. I liked Rathman, right? I liked William Floyd. I like Fred Beasley. Give me the fullbacks. I love the fullbacks. That's why I even like Mike Allstott. Big physical guys that are going to run you over. Now, Juszczyk does it a little bit different, but he still has those moments. I just like the versatility of a fullback. To me, it's one of those fun positions that you get to see, and you don't see as many in the league this year. Chicago employs one as well now. Mr. Corey says it was Kyle who traded up Joe Williams, Dante Pettis, and CJ Beathard, but also Ayuk instead of CeeDee Lamb, and was his choice. So yeah, I think there's going to be some of that give and take, right? Some guys are going to work out and some not. Harold says Tartt may not be interested in coming back. He may not be interested in hearing the criticism and blame for the dropped interception. I think he actually got over it. I do. I think Jaquiski Tartt got past that interception. I think a lot of the fan base is still holding on to it, but I think Tartt understands that, you made a mistake, you got to move on. And that's part of being a pro. Now, he's going to continually look back on that occasionally and just be like, oh, man. And it'll frustrate him a little bit, but he's moved on as a player. He's ready to move forward. And the cool thing is there's short memory for if you make another play. And that's the thing. If he was in the San Francisco and he made a big play this time, everyone will forget the time that he missed. You might, in the back of your mind, remember, but it's unfortunate when we let these things hang over people, and it changes your mindset of how these guys are. It's really frustrating. Yeah, exactly. And San Francisco says, here's to all our players having a healthy, productive 2022 season. I like that a lot. Traffic says, God, Chip Kelly is a name I wouldn't mind forgetting forever. Yeah, I just watched a little bit of the UCLA game on Saturday. It was interesting seeing Chip down there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot Chip's the UCLA coach. Lou says, is Tartt's contract fully guaranteed after the season starts if we sign him? No, if they wait until after week 1, it's not fully guaranteed. Well done, Lou. So that could be another reason the 49ers wait. It would not be fully guaranteed. It would just be a prorated contract. It'd be basically week to week. So they could move on from him in a heartbeat if that happened, and maybe that's what they do. So maybe Tartt does end up joining this team. Mr. Corey says, I understand Tartt. If he gets his money in the bank, why go play for a veterans minimum, especially given California taxes? 49ers would be being stubborn. They could give him what Philly gave him. Yeah, they could, but they don't have to. You know what I mean? And it could be a thing where I always say this, the juice has to be worth the squeeze. And maybe they feel Jaquiski Tartt for more than a veteran minimum is just not worth it. We'll see. If the play on the field doesn't materialize the way they want, then it might become worth it. And then they go ahead and they pay for him. So Big Papa says Kyle Pitts. Paul says Kyle Pitts. Yeah, I think Kyle Pitts is great. I think he's going to be a tremendous tight end in this league. He's going to eventually be one of the top 3 guys. I just don't think he's there yet. He might prove it in the next 3 weeks. But I think just coming off his rookie season, I don't think he's in those top 3 guys yet. But he'll get there. Kyle Pitts is an absolute freak of nature. The athletic ability and size is tremendous. So I'm there. Quandel says, do you play any fantasy football or any other sport? I do not play fantasy football or any fantasy sports. I used to do pick'em a lot, but the reason I don't do fantasy is I always ran into this problem. Number one, I didn't like playing players against my team. That's number one. I wouldn't want to play players against my team. And then people say, well, then just don't play those players when that team's playing your team. Here's the problem. I also want to win. So I always had that little bit of an issue. So I've never got into fantasy. Pretty much everyone asks me every single year to join their fantasy team. Got asked to join like 10 different leagues this year. Just not something like I do for that reason. I want to be able to root for my team. So I kind of just do that. But I respect people that do it. I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. managing those teams, making sure you're watching the waiver wire and all that. So yeah. Let's see. Donald says that's like Ant hit the YouTube itself. Ooh, what was that about? I don't know what that was about, but I kind of like it. 40 Years Fogey says if Tartt had good hands, he would be playing wide receiver. Yeah, I mean that's the reason he's a defensive back, right? Good point, Gary, right there. I mean, it was unfortunate. I mean, everyone wants Jaquiski Tartt to make that play. Jaquiski Tartt wants to make that play. He got ahead of himself. He tried to run before he caught the ball. That happens. You know, I mean, there's guys. I mean, you could look at Roger Craig in that 1990 NFC Championship game. He could go back. He would make sure he secured that football. You know, there are things that happen, and it's unfortunate that these things happen. You know, sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it works out. Guy McIntyre fumbles a kickoff return against, you know, the Miami Dolphins. It could have been catastrophic, but it's not. They get through it. So sometimes those plays stand out in people's minds because you lost. And then sometimes in cases like Guy McIntyre, it works out and no one remembers because you won the football game. Just don't know how it's going to go. But every single one of these players have mistakes. They make mistakes, but how they rally and overcome them is what's important. What you're hoping is that those mistakes don't build up enough that you can't overcome them. And hopefully your team picks you up, and they definitely try to do that. So yeah, for sure. And Jimmo says 9 minutes left in that game. I get what you're saying. I really do. That was a tough one. But you're hoping you're going to be able to win. You know, I mean, that one was really, really bad. Juanito says, do you see Gray getting any targets? If so, do you project, what does the project stat line to be? So I do think Gray's going to get some targets. I think they're going to take a couple of shots down the field at Danny Gray. I think if I had to guess, it's going to be somewhere between 2 to 3 targets. I don't think there's going to be a lot coming Danny Gray's way. I think they're going to rely on the other 4 guys ahead of him a little bit more. But I think they are going to use Gray in certain situations to take the top off and influence the defense. So his impact might be felt even when he's not being targeted. Now, this has been my thought process the entire year. For me and Danny Gray, it's all about yards per reception. So I want his yards per reception to be 16, 17 yards per reception, where he's having these explosive plays that change the game. So if he was targeted twice and he had 1 catch for 22 yards, I think that would be good for Danny Gray. I think that's what you're hoping. So I'm going to say he gets between 2 and 3 targets. He makes 1 catch, and I'm hoping that catch goes for over 17 yards in the game. And I think his influence will be felt all throughout the game as far as allowing these other receivers to play underneath and to make plays underneath, because that's important. That's what you want to do with players like Deebo Samuel. You want to make sure that you have guys you can go ahead and develop the underneath throws for him and Brandon Ayuk. Those are important plays for those guys for sure. Oh, no, you're good, Donald. I didn't think it was anything bad. I just didn't know what it was for. But I have no problems with it, Donald. Really, I don't get offended easily. So I just thought, I was like, whoa, what am I hitting? I kind of liked it. I was like, okay, let's get into this. So we're excited about everything that's going on in the chat right now. So no problems, Donald. Really, no need to apologize. I was just trying to figure out what was going on there. But really good, really cool. Mr. Corey said, I missed out on $1,000 because I couldn't bring myself to pick Anquan Bolden to have over 80 yards in the Super Bowl against Baltimore. Heart overhead when I knew Whitner couldn't cover him. That happens. That happens for sure. I used to do pick'em. And I was really good at pick'em for a long time. And I actually missed out on $5,000 gift card to Best Buy. It was one of the most frustrating things ever. And Seattle had all the Cowboys had to do was win the game, and Tony Romo was in there to hold, and he dropped the ball, and he tries to get in, and he doesn't get in. It's one of the most frustrating things ever. All he had to do was kick that extra point in, and if he kicks that extra point in, the Cowboys win. I get the exact score right. I win the $5,000 gift card, but he freaking fumbled it. It was so frustrating. So I know how those things go. It gets frustrating. Traffic says, last time I checked, 49ers were up 10 at one point in that game, and there's other players on the field besides Tartt. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that, you know, there was a lot of opportunities to win. The Niners definitely could have held on to that lead. There was mistakes that went around, including not converting on 4th down, you know, not getting those yardage. Those plays are big. You know, and I guarantee the team doesn't blame Jaquiski Tartt. None of the coaching staff blames Tartt. The one that was probably hardest on Tartt was Tartt. But you're just doing the best you can. You can't make all the plays. You just can't. You're gonna miss on some. That's just football. That's the way it goes. 49ers Fogey says, Gray, first play of the game when the Bears put 8 in the box. if they come in and they try to put 8 in the box, yeah, you're going to take chances. With Ray McLeod, you're going to take chances with Danny Gray down the field. To me, that makes a lot of sense as well. Shylock says, can't trust a quarterback that already losing his hair. Oh, man. Shylock taking a little bit of shot at Trey. Oh, yeah, I mean, he wears the headbands, though. Trey handles himself with the headbands. I think he looks pretty good when he's got the headbands on and the hair coming out. And I don't have no problems with it. Hopefully he gets it done. So Christopher says, getting close to the campaign to hope Kittle can play. Go Niners. Get that first one, Niners. Yeah, hopefully. I'm really hoping the Niners do get that big-time win. That would be nice. And hopefully Kittle can go. But if he can't, they've insulated themselves for sure. I mean, that tight end room was stacked already, 4 deep, because Tyler Kroft proved that he belonged on this football team. Ross Dwelley had himself one heck of a camp, and they just couldn't move off any one of those guys. Kyle Shanahan, the state of the franchise, says, Charlie Warner and Ross Dwelley, we brought in guys to compete. They're going to have to work for it this year, and they really did put in the work. And then one of those guys ended up making it with them in Tyler Kroft. I like Kroft. I like what he's going to be able to do in the red zone. I think that's a place I want to see. The size is what I'm interested, because he's a lot bigger, than a guy like Ross Dwelley. But yeah, Shylock's having some fun. Everyone's having a little laughs on that. That was freaking fantastic. People are just having fun. I mean, that's what it's about, right? You just got to have fun in chat talking about the 49ers. Mr. Corey says, I just want to win and have no serious injuries. Exactly. And I want this win to look different than last year's at Detroit, where you had all the end of the game situations. Not only did you lose Jason Verrett, but you just had them almost come back. I think that was a little frustrating. I wasn't a huge fan of the way that game ended. It left too many questions. It left sour taste in people's mouth. So hopefully we get a very confident win from the 49ers. They go in there, they handle business. I don't know what all you guys are projecting. On my preview show, I projected the 49ers win the game 23-13. I think it stays a little bit closer. But 10 points is still a significant win for the Niners. But I think this defense is going to play really good. And I just have question marks about the Bears offensive line. I think if they weren't so young, starting a 5th round pick like Braxton Jones at left tackle, I mean, Nick Bosa is going to get after it. And I think if they had a different guy, maybe I would think this game would be even closer than that. But I'm curious what everyone thinks about the scores and how things happen. And Gary coming through with losing hair never bothered Bradshaw. Well done. Yeah, well done. Well done. Terry Bradshaw winning Super Bowls with a bald head. He did it for sure. That's a very solid one. And then Juanito asked Shylock, how many games do you feel if he chops it off or loses it all? Very interesting things. I want to thank everyone for coming through for chat. I hope you guys all enjoy the game that's going to be coming up later today. Rams versus Bills. Football is here, guys. Everyone is going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you guys join me. Of course, we have things coming out tomorrow. Cover 2 with Warren. Warren Brown is coming out tomorrow. What's Good with Jay in the Bay coming out tomorrow as well. And then on Saturday, What's the Game Plan at 11 a.m. Check that video out. And then on Sunday, come join me for the live reaction show after the game. We'll have a fun conversation about what happened in the game. Hopefully, we'll be celebrating a 49ers victory. So that would be really, really nice. Hopefully, you guys all come through from that. But enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the game on Sunday. Have a good time, and I'll see you on Sunday night for that reaction show. I hope you guys all have a good night. Stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers.